What's up, Chris? Welcome back to another episode of the Equity Accelerator podcast, where you and I, every week, pick a topic mostly about real estate and the mortgage industry. And because I am a licensed loan originator operating out of Portland, Oregon.
And a good one.
This is my 16th year in the business.
That's right.
And, I'm a huge podcast lover. I'm a radio lover. So we started this podcast at the beginning of this year, and we've just had so much fun talking about tips and tricks for how to have better conversations in your real estate business, how to use the mortgage conversation to improve your real estate business. And also just ideas as a homeowner of how to be more strategic about managing your debts, financial advising, but we also use the idea of equity acceleration as a jumping off point into a lot of other areas in life. Yeah. And today's topic actually is a bit of a plot twist because we're talking about the opposite of equity acceleration, equity deceleration. Let's hold your horses, people. Don't accelerate it too much.
Wait, this is an M. Night Shyamalan twist. Like, what just happened? What?
Yeah, exactly.
What?
The
Bruce
record
Willis?
scratch.
Oh, yeah. Don't accelerate your equity.
Don't accelerate your equity.
With the show called Equity Accelerator. Well, that's good. I mean, that's super juicy hook. I like it. I mean, are you just teasing me here, or do you really believe we should not? Why don't you qualify the statement?
Well, one of the things that people all across this country have an impulse to do is to pay extra on their mortgage payment. Once they have a mortgage, they say, "Oh, I pay an extra $100 a month," or "Oh, I pay an extra payment every year." And so I'm turning my 30-year loan into a 22-year loan.
Right.
And I'm going to save $70,000 by, lowering the cost of my interest over that period of time.
That sounds financially responsible to do that. I'm going to save $70,000.
It feels like an easy win.
Right.
And in many ways, and I don't want to tell people that are doing that they shouldn't do it. Some people, it's a great strategy. Yeah. And mathematically, it's totally true. That does happen. When you pay extra on your mortgage, you shorten the term of the mortgage, which lessens the amount of interest you're paying on that mortgage over the life of the loan.
Yeah.
But if you think of it like this, I always sort of think of it as if you're paying an extra, let's say $3,000 a year on your mortgage, which turns a 30-year mortgage into a 20-year mortgage, you're basically giving $3,000 a year to the mortgage bank for free until the mortgage is paid off before it was supposed to. So for 20 years, the mortgage is just getting free money. And you're building up equity. You're accelerating your equity, but that money is not necessarily doing anything for you. It doesn't change doesn't lower the cost of your payment.
Right.
And it doesn't create a return. So you're just parking it in your home's equity.
Okay. Question. So the only place that really benefits me is if I live in the house I'm in and paying a mortgage on to the very end of my mortgage, right? Because if I sell that, most people live in their house on average every 7 to 9 years when they move. So people are living in their house, let's say 9 years, 12 years, whatever.
Right.
And if I've been making extra payments and I'm like, here, bank, hold this money for me, or here, mortgage company, hold this money for me.
Exactly.
And I sell in 5 years from now, that did nothing for me.
Then at that point, the bank says, well, here's that money I was holding for you. They give it back to you, and then you walk away.
And you save nothing in interest because you are still just paying on your amortized loan schedule, right?
There may be an argument against that, but I think that the savings is
it's
pretty
not
small.
$70,000 by making I didn't save $70,000.
Right. So the $70,000 concept is basically like if you compare holding a loan for 30 years, paying the minimum for 30 years,
right,
versus paying the extra $3,000 and paying it off in 20 years, the $70,000 is the cost of that remaining 10 years that you're not paying.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So so no gain is realized until you then have eliminated the debt before you were scheduled to. Anyway, this is just one example on the idea that there is no intrinsic rate of return on home equity. Mm-hmm. Home equity is an asset, but it is not, there's no rate of return on it. The real estate value is not connected to how you have a loan,
right?
How you have it financed.
Your house will appreciate whether you make extra payments or not, or it won't appreciate. I mean, it's not attached, like you said.
Correctly. It's disconnected. So
Yeah.
the mortgage is another layer, another vector of financial relationship to the house, but there's the mortgage and your debt, and then there's the real estate and the real estate market, and they have they don't have nothing to do with each other, but they have little to do with each other, frankly.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And so one of the things that I like to advise people, not just around paying extra on their mortgage, and take that for what it's worth. For some people, it is an easy win, but if you take $3,000 and just save it for 20 years,
right,
technically you'll have the same amount of money 20 years from now to just pay the loan off,
right,
completely, and you won't have locked it into your home's equity over that period of time. So that's a concept called liquidity, right? Home equity is not very liquid, and we define liquidity as use and control of your money, right? How quickly can you access it? So if you own precious metals, right?
Yeah, right.
How liquid is that? It's like there's a market for it, and you could probably go to like the pawn shop and sell it and turn it into cash. So it's actually more liquid than a lot of things. But you have to do the most liquid thing is cash. Cash is immediately valuable and redeemable, like anywhere, anytime. And that's the big benefit there. But home equity is only accessible to people when you create a mortgage of some kind against your house or sell the house.
Right.
So it's complicated and expensive to do both of those things. So as an asset class, it's not very liquid. It's mostly illiquid. So whenever we're making financial decisions, if you talk to any financial advisor, they're trained early to think of three things: safety, liquidity, and rate of return. Those are the three priorities for any financial decision.
Right.
And safety is a tricky one, and it's not for me to define, right? Safety is something that only people can define for themselves. And the real estate market has been really, really strong for a really long time. We bottomed out in the Pacific Northwest. We bottomed out at the end of 2011, and now it's 2019. So we've had an 8-year just ride up and up and up, and it's really still going.
Right.
So it feels really safe to have our money there. But I bought a house I've bought a bunch of houses. I bought a house in 2003, I bought a house in 2005, and I bought a house in 2007. And in 2007, if you look at the Case-Shiller, that was the August of 2007 is when I closed on, not the house I'm in now, but the last house I was in.
Right.
And then it just went down. So it went from 2007 to 11 was just like
losing equity every year. It
was equity deceleration. Now, so if you have home equity, when that's happening, it's a totally different feeling. If you bought a house for cash, and it's just like you bought a house for $400,000 for cash, and then 3 years later you realize it's worth $300,000. That feels one way. You've literally lost $100,000. But if you put 10% down, $40,000 down on that $400,000 purchase, and then you're upside down, you've lost $100,000, but you're still living in the house. Hopefully you're in a sustainable mortgage payment. But all that other cash is still in the bank. It's on the sidelines.
Right. Totally.
So what is safer? Right. So there is a safety component. It's not, and real estate is very, very safe as far as most people's options, but it's not quite what people think. And then there's the liquidity, which we already touched on, and real estate is not very liquid compared to other assets. And there's the rate of return, and the rate of return of putting more down on your house is only one thing. The rate of return of putting 30% down instead of 20% down is the money you save by paying less over time. So the rate of return is the reduction of cash flow. Okay. So let's say you put 30% down instead of 20% down, and that results in a $300 a month benefit, right?
Right.
Depending on how much that money is, it's like, okay, well, where else could you put that money and make $300 a month?
Right. Right.
But a lot of that $300 a month is going to your principal already. So that is what you have to do is discover. This is another concept we use to help you measure these decisions. We call it the lag, the liability asset gap. And I can't remember if we've talked about this before.
We've mentioned it, before.
So we would measure the tax adjusted cost of borrowing against the potential value of that cash. Let's say the difference between 30% down and 20% down on the $400,000 house, it's $40,000. So could that $40,000 be put somewhere that has a compounding rate of return that exceeds the tax adjusted cost of borrowing that $30,000? Now, I have a piece of software that helps you measure that. And over time, based on the rates that are prevailing for the last, 8 years or so, over time, the amount you get in compounded investments will greatly exceed the cost, the tax adjusted cost of borrowing. So if you have the stomach for a little bit of a higher mortgage payment, you can oftentimes put yourself in a better position. It's literally what I'm talking about is quite the opposite of paying extra on your mortgage. This is the opposite. This is using leverage, putting less into your house in order to keep the cash outside of the real estate, doing something else productive with it. So you still have the same real estate asset, and you have more cash doing more things for you over time.
Which actually, I mean, so, it actually does accelerate equity.
Yes.
But like because we're ultimately, we're talking about is rate of return, but we're not necessarily saying accelerate your equity in your house through the benefit of making extra payments or bigger down payments. We're just saying, by the way, this is what I love about how you think about things, because it's not like you're just trying to sell a mortgage. You're like, look, let's figure out where do you get a rate of return? Let's figure out how to take care of your money as you buy a house, right? It's not just buy a house, and it's not just your monthly payment. There's more to the picture, and most mortgage people don't actually help people see the bigger picture.
That's right. That's what we've really tried to create is when people sit down with me for the first time, and I try to create a new kind of paradigm for them right away. I say, look, I've tried to set this up not as a transactional thing, but as a relationship thing where I am a resource to you, not just for buying this house, but for helping you manage paying this house paying the mortgage over time, and manage paying all your debts, help you manage your debts and your equity. I'm like a financial advisor for your real estate and your debts. Right. Yeah.
Yep. That's what I love. I love that. And if I had to summarize sort of my thoughts about this, one, a lot of the numbers, I can get lost in numbers because numbers overwhelm me, but to have that you have software and that you can be the translator for me. I don't have to know everything that you just said, which is refreshing, but that you think differently about the process is what I'm taking away. You think differently about, ultimately it's about how do we create equity? Right. How do we accelerate equity? But it's not always what we think. And it's not always the common shared wisdom that we're all told, make a good down payment, or make extra payments, or
make a big down payment, or get the lowest possible rate. A lot of times, a loan strategy that has a lower rate, or, a lower rate combined with the wrong strategy is most of the time more expensive than the right strategy combined with what I call competitive rate. So if someone's just purely rate shopping and they feel like, oh, I know what this is, I'm just buying a mortgage and I want the lowest rate possible. Sometimes that does make sense, and I won't argue against that. But oftentimes the strategic conversation, the value of the relationship and someone partnering with you over time, I'm convinced will create far more financial benefit than just getting a sweet deal on a mortgage as a one-off.
Right. Totally. Yeah. So, I remember there was a book I read called Networking is Not Working. And, it was clever. And the guy it was actually about networking, but I mean, It was about just like, the equity accelerator in this episode is don't accelerate your equity.
Right.
But he talked about how he was a financial planner, and his whole thing was to add value to his database of people, like his clients. He wanted to add value. And so he had referred a bunch of business to one of his clients. And his client was approached by another financial planner who was like, I could have gotten you way more on the return on your portfolio. He's like, you should come talk to me because I could have given you a better rate of return.
Right.
And the guy said to him, it doesn't matter if you could have got me a better rate of return because this guy, the author of the book, has given me so many referrals that
he's actually made me so much money. Right.
He's given me so much money that your rate of return would pale in comparison to what he has done for my business.
Yeah.
Just an example of that, just because
it's a counterintuitive way to add value. It's not necessarily intrinsic to the product itself.
Just because something looks like a better deal, and in your case, in your example, a better rate, doesn't mean that that's the best solution for what you're trying to accomplish.
That's right.
Anyway,
that's right. I love it.
Well, listen, guys, those of you listening to this, I think maybe the takeaway here is there is more to accelerating your equity than what is commonly shared out in the public spaces. And I think the access to what are those options is a conversation with somebody who knows to look beyond the common wisdom. Like, that's what I love about you, James. You can look in the gray spaces of what everybody says, because in some ways you challenge the status quo. I don't know if you're a rebel. Would you say you're a rebel?
I'm a counter.
What do they call that?
A contrarian.
A contrarian. That's a great word. That's a great term.
I like to, I definitely feel when everybody does things one way,
right?
For me, I see an opportunity and I see maybe a problem. Right. I don't know.
No, and that's good because you're not just a contrarian to be a contrarian, right? Like, because then there's some people who are just like, no matter what you say, they're like, no, that doesn't work. It's not that you're saying like the advice given isn't the thing you should do. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's more to the picture. You say that you're like, let's just look at what it is you're trying to accomplish, and then let's create a plan that actually matches what you said you want, rather than you just accepting whatever everybody says.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
So if people want to reach out to you because they're like, hey, I like that you don't just like puff smoke and say what everybody else says. And I want somebody who's willing to give me the honest truth about stuff, which is who you are. How do people reach out to you?
I'm glad you asked, Chris. You can find me on the internet at pdxhomeloan.com, where you'll find all things about me, has my email and my contact information there. And if you want to email me, it's just my name, James, at pdxhomeloan.com. So Perfect. PDX is like a nickname for Portland if you're just joining us for the first time, which is where I operate.
That's perfect. I love it. Good stuff, James. pdxhomeloan.com. Gang, that's where you can go. James, until next time, take care, and thanks for all you do.
You're the best, Chris. Thank you.
See ya.